Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Franklin, and I work for the Miami University Alumni Association. Joining us for today's webinar and conversation is Jacqueline Dougherty, the Director of the Western Center for Social Impact and Innovation, and Nicholas Money, the Director of the Western Program. Jackie is a sociologist with interest in the classical social and political theory, inequality, class, gender, sexuality, and race, and the sharing economy. She graduated with her PhD from the University of Cincinnati. Her current research investigates the structures of the organizations and the experiences of people involved in the commons. She is committed to ensuring her teaching and research explores complex social problems and solutions from interdisciplinary perspectives. Nick is joining us, and he is a professor of biology and botany in addition to directing our Western program. He graduated with his PhD from the University of Exeter in the UK. He is an expert on mycology and has authored a number of books that celebrates the diversity of the microbial world. In his research at Miami, he has pioneered the use of high-speed video microscopy to understand the explosive mechanisms used by fungi to launch their spores into the air. You both have much higher education to read these words a little bit better than me, but welcome to you both this afternoon on Saturday. Thank you for joining us and having time with us today. Just to the audience, the questions that we have for this webinar will be collected from both your registration, but you're also able to ask them live, and either Jackie or Nick will address some of them throughout their webinar. When you're asking your questions live during our session, you can click the Ask a Question button at the bottom of your screen. Please note, in the interest of the time that we have available, we may not be able to answer every question we get today. Today's webinar will last about an hour, including our time at the end for questions and answers. With that being said, we'll go ahead and get started. Jackie and Nick, say hello to our group, and you guys are welcome to begin. Thank you for joining us again.
Okay.
Hi,
Hello.
everybody. I'll be going second, so handing it to Nick.
Thank you, Jackie. And we're up with the PowerPoints now? I guess so. Yes, I should begin with some apologies. First of all, apologizing on behalf of the COVID virus for ruining all our lives, and in a very minor way then causing us to meet in this remote fashion. And the second apology is for the misleading portrait at the beginning, at least of me. I think that was taken 10 years ago, and I marvel at the lushness of my my hair whenever that photograph was taken. So that will clearly have to be updated before I get in trouble with the administration for false advertising. I think that's enough by way of caveats. So what I'm going to do here, Jackie's going to talk. She'll focus her comments on the Western Center for Social Impact and Innovation. And I've got a few slides here to accompany this sort of brief overview of where we're at with the Western program and some of the future initiatives. So this is not the perfect format, but it will work fine. I'm convinced. Of course, I should be familiar with this, having now taught online for more than a year and a half, with also some in-person teaching too within Western. So my colleague Emily is actually controlling the slides. So why don't we begin perhaps with there? Okay, so second slide here, recent history. 2008, 2010, development of the new Western within the College of Arts and Science. I'm sharing this because there may be a few of you that have sort of lost this thread over the last few years. I actually became involved with the Western program as early as 2008, 2009, and I became the program director late in 2010. So this has been my primary academic home now for a decade. And 2010 through 2020, then the first 10 years of Western as the home of the individualized studies major, which I'm going to discuss briefly. And then just before the beginning of the pandemic then, we launched the Western Center for Social Impact and Innovation. And Jackie's going to talk more about this. I'll have a few words about the Western Center toward the end of my presentation. And don't panic here, I've only got 10 slides. So we're already 20% of the way through here. If you would like to, lovely etching actually of the Western program's home within Peabody Hall, familiar to most of you listening in today. Please visit our website for information as regularly as you are able. Every day you need to be visiting this program to see the events that we're hosting. And I think my colleagues have done a remarkable job in the last year and a half during these very, very challenging circumstances in actually continuing with in-person events throughout this period. Also hosting a lot of online events, but we've continued to work very closely with our students during this period, and I'll talk about some of the outcomes of that work in a couple of slides. Very briefly here, mission statements, the next slide. I guess I'll read this. I wrote this 10 years ago. I still like the way that it sounds, and I think I know that we're still committed to the ethos that's expressed in this paragraph. The Western Center is dedicated to developing students as independent thinkers with the skills to address the complex challenges and opportunities of the 21st century. Classes taught by our faculty engage students in interdisciplinary inquiry and form a foundation for individualized and integrated study that draws from the humanities, sciences, arts, social sciences, and professional programs. The Western program values this diversity of interests, as well as discovery, creativity, risk-taking, co-curricular learning, and active citizenship. And this really has been the premier experience of my life in higher education, my career in higher education. I continue to be inspired by my colleagues and the incredible students that we've attracted to our major then, the individualized studies major. Let's look at the next slide. I wanted to show you this graphic here. I think it speaks to the distinctiveness of the Western program and the major within Miami University. So firstly, with the major, one of the attractive features of this is that students can design their own course of study. We have an extremely well-structured advising system. We don't let our students go astray. We work with them from first meeting through graduation and beyond. We still are committed to seminar-style classes, and many of our classes remain quite small, meaning that we can work individually with students. We also encourage students to collaborate with faculty on their individualized parts of their studies and to work with us. In fact, we require them to work with us during the research component of their senior year. More about that shortly. But in addition to this, we have a community in Peabody Hall. We have events and programs that I think foster community interactions and relationships. And as I said, we've sustained this activity throughout the shutdown. And we're looking forward to getting back to more in-person events, of course, in the fall semester. We have a lot of scholarships that we distribute to help students with study abroad, for example. And with, of course, the high costs of higher education today. And so I think we can afford within Western to be generous toward our majors in individualized studies. We create a small college experience for our students, and what's now become the Western Center for Social Impact and Innovation is a huge part of this, allowing students, providing a place for students to meet with us, to interact with each other. This is a very, very valuable provides a very valuable opportunity for our students. Continues to do so. Peer mentors provide support in academic centers. I don't actually know what that means, and I'm not going to try and cover that. Peer mentors. Well, we have mentors. Our students are also work with faculty across the university. So I guess I'm going to try and explain this. So if we have a student that's interested in the social sciences, for example, they may well be working with a faculty member, Jackie, but also with one of our colleagues in sociology. But we also we collaborate with other sort of academic programs and academic centers. We collaborate a lot with the Humanities Center on campus. So let's have a look at the next slide here. So where have we been during my tenure as Western Program Director? Numbers have bounced around a bit. And there's more to this graph than is immediately obvious. So certainly we've grown as a program. And the last figure that I put on there was 2020. It's about the same at this point. However, what do we mean? What I'm doing in this graph here is picturing the number of majors in individualized studies at the end of the spring semester. So what happens each year is that we recruit students from the student body already at Miami. They become attracted to our major, they change their major, or if they're university studies students, they haven't selected a major, they will join the program during their freshman year, sometimes in their sophomore year. And so the number of students always grows throughout the academic year. The thing is, at the end of the spring semester, our seniors graduate. So the number declines. And so it depends where you pick those numbers and where the university chooses to actually measure the number of students, majors that we have in the program. We also have a lot of minors that are associated with this, and the classes that we teach are taken by students outside of the major. I could talk more about that later if you're interested. But about at the end of last semester, we were at about 70 majors. We just graduated a relatively small senior class of only a dozen students. And so you can see now we're probably in the high 50s. My math is correct. We'll get above 70 again by the end of this calendar year. But then this coming year, we've got the largest group of seniors that we've had in the 10 years I've been associated with the program. So we've got, I think it's 23 students at this point. So if we capture the numbers in April next year, yeah, they'll be pretty robust numbers above 70. But then bam, at the end of the semester, those numbers will decline. And then we'll rebuild during the year. We are working hard to recruit students directly from high school using scholarship money, some of which has been generously provided by alumni, Western College alumni and others. This is a work in progress, and particularly under the conditions of COVID, the numbers are low. We're talking about less than 10 students that might join the program from high school. I recognize that this is, and the university administration recognizes that this is a priority for us. And we are working as hard as we can to do this. Jackie may talk about some of the relationships that she and other faculty have developed with regional high schools. But still, the largest proportion of our students right now come to us after they've already committed to an undergraduate career at Miami University. So we can talk more about all of these things in the Q&A if there's time. Where are we at with the slides here? 2 more, I think. Next slide. Oh, nice slide here. I have shown this before. It's probably the best one I've got of a senior class. Showing what? Happy students. So we do meet with our students in the senior year in particular. They're all engaged in independent research projects. They take this as part of, they take those projects as part of their professional portfolio into their applications for grad school and in their careers in the profit and non-profit sector, private and public sector, and otherwise. And it's really been a source of tremendous disappointment for me this year, because I taught the senior capstone classes in the fall and the spring, that I really couldn't meet much with our students. I didn't meet with them as a group at all, other than online. I met with most of them individually, through social distancing and so forth, but we could not get together in these kind of events, obviously, under these circumstances, and a great deal was lost through this. I feel personally sad, that I'd lost out on that experience of forging these sort of deep professional relationships with our students. And I know a lot of the students missed those kinds of interactions with faculty, but probably more importantly with their peers. But this has been an international problem. Nevertheless, penultimate slide. Oh no, we can go back to this, or you can look at this online. Most of you are aware of this. One thing that makes us very distinctive as a program is that we offer a core of classes that all of our majors take. So what I'm listing here are the requirements for our individualized studies majors. On the right there, we're looking at the senior project experience. So we've got this suite of classes on the left that we offer all the way from the 200 through the 300 level for our students. And what this does make us distinctive. Just before shutdown, I went to a conference in Florida, which was an individualized programs conference. So it was for faculty and staff that work with comparable programs throughout the nation. So it was the last time that I actually got on a plane. But one of the things that was clear, I gave a presentation at that conference talking about our program, and few, if any, of the other programs had this kind of core of classes. Many of them were emphasizing online experiences. Many of them maybe started out with a seminar for all of their majors, and some of them are really big, like at the University of Alabama, for example. But they don't have this kind of commitment to working with students, in my opinion, throughout their undergraduate experience. I don't want to take up too much time because I want to leave plenty of time for Jackie. Next slide, which I think is the penultimate one. Here we go. All kinds of paths that our students have taken in recent years. We've had students, and this is reflected in their senior projects. We had a student that was looking at fisheries in off the coast of Massachusetts. He's now actually works on a first mate on a trawler, I believe, which is very, very interesting career path. We've got students that work in environmental areas, environmental studies, environmental remediation. We have students in Alaska and elsewhere. Thus, this picture. We've had students join the military that came to us. And through ROTC experiences at Miami, we've got a student that flies AWACS planes, submarine hunting aircraft in the Navy. Really quite remarkable young woman that graduated a couple of years ago. We have many students that are pursuing issues of diversity and equity and interest in ethnicity, geographical origins, and so forth, which is becoming one of my great areas of interest as a biologist. We even have a student that's working with us now who's majoring, in a sense, in space law. So we don't have a major in space law at Miami, but through her individualized classes that we can organize and through her studies in the Western program, this is what she's going to do in the future. So she may well go to law school. I was completely unaware that this was a distinctive field within jurisprudence, litigation, until she came to us, but a wonderful student. And then I'm just going to end here. So as I said, I taught the senior capstone this year and worked with these students, mostly online. What did we have here? We had and I'm just going to tell you about some of their projects. Issues of equity and equality when it comes to food resources in the region. The foster parenting system in Cincinnati. These are sort of snapshots of their projects. Black women and activism. Very, very interesting project. I wish we had more time to talk about this. Environmental discrimination and litigation related to this. Supply chain disruption, risk mitigation. the fashion industry during the pandemic. That was a fascinating project. Interactive storytelling, the role of color in film. We had a student do an incredible video that's got lots of hits on YouTube. He's got a glowing future ahead of him. Creative ontology of self in the critique of cross-cultural applications. So that student, she's going to graduate school in Colorado State University, where actually I worked for a while. Haley, she's going to be studying for her master's and possibly PhD in philosophy, as one might guess from the title of her project. We had a twin who engaged in twin research and talked about the ethics or lack thereof in some of the biomedical experimentation on twins, in which she participated as a young person. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, marketing wine, and then we had a student that is now finishing up looking at business leaders and sort of what's the basis of charismatic leadership. Interesting project. Last slide, I think, which I only mean, oh no, so we're going to be talking about this great segue. So Jackie's going to take over shortly here, talk about the Western Center for Social Impact and Innovation. And here's a photograph from just before shutdown, when we're in the Western Center and working with these students. So I think I'm done at this point. If I'd like to cede the stage here to my colleague, Jackie Dougherty.
Mic on. There we go. Still mess up with the mic after over a year of this work. My name is Dr. Jacqueline Dougherty. I've had the pleasure of working with a number of you through WAMU board meetings and other alumni work. So I am definitely, as is Nick, excited to be here to share some of the very cool things we have going on in the program. Carrying through the Western legacy, which is really what the Western Center for Social Impact and Innovation is about. All right. It also located physically in Peabody Hall. A little bit about our mission, and then here's the formal mission, and then I'll give you the informal mission in just a moment. But the Western Center for Social Impact and Innovation is this interdisciplinary hub for student engagement with issues of social impact. And we always have an eye, obviously, to the global. As is right now, and I think certainly during Western College's time as well, our faculty specialty and much of the work that we do in our classes, the center is particularly interested in working at the intersections of science and social justice. So I'll talk a little bit about some of the themes that we've been exploring in just a moment. The center had its inaugural year in fall 2019. So we just wrapped up our first 2-year cycle. And really, our center work happens through a couple of academic courses, but mostly through co-curricular programming, both on and off campus. The informal mission of the Western Center is that we really use the center to bring Western's interdisciplinary method, an individualized method, to students and faculty and community members all across campus and off campus. So we have a number of different partners in different divisions who we work with to put this programming on. So it's really been a nice vehicle through which to expand Western's reach. Hopefully that didn't sound too imperial. All right. The initiative obviously honors the rich history of social activism from Western College through Western Women's College, and then through the 3.0 Individualized Studies program that Dr. Money just talked about. And really getting students to think about some of the very tough issues concerning social responsibility, social entrepreneurship, social justice, basically everything social. The center this year, this academic year alone, fall and spring, throughout the pandemic, engaged 1,206 participants, mostly through its co-curricular programming. If you count our course enrollments, we offer 1 to 2 courses each semester on center themes, as well as some of our mentorship and funding programs. Our numbers are really bumped up to around 1,275. That to me is amazing with the second year of a center where a lot of our programming had to be online. And as many of you who have been working online throughout the pandemic know, it is really a tall order to get people to stay on Zoom after the work or school day ends for a totally optional elective program just on something they're interested in, which is essentially what most of these folks did. The general programming, we have kind of 2 streams of programming at the Western Center. We always like to keep one stream of programming open to whatever timely issues are relevant to the center's broad mission. These issues are often social, economic, or environmental in nature, and they tend to have kind of one of 3 themes: global focus, a diversity, equity, and inclusion focus, or a sustainability focus. Often in one program, we're looking at multiple themes here. I just wrote a few down of the programs that we've run this year and some of our community partners. But if you're interested in learning more about the programs, most of the virtual programs are open to the public because that's easy to do. Make sure to hit up our Western Center social medias. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And that's where we publish all of our kind of what's going on this week and this month work. So just a couple of highlights. We had our very first international visiting scholar from Brazil, Yama Quixote, who is a filmmaker finishing up his PhD in anthropology in collaboration with staff and some of the students at Western, and through lockdown, because he came in spring 2020, Yama ended up doing this incredible 5-part podcast called Unfinished: Stories at the End of the World, right as we all felt like the world was kind of at an ending in lockdown. So it was, I think it provided a nice outlet for students as well to get a bigger picture view on what we were experiencing and what would come next. But we've had almost 600 downloads so far on that as of just May 4th, last month. You can access this podcast open to the public anywhere on Miami's website, as well as Apple Podcasts, Podbeans, wherever you get your podcasts. In terms of DEI, we've done a lot of work around eradicating campus sexual violence and supporting LGBTQIA+ students. So you can see some of the work we've done there. We were awarded an $18,000 Women's Giving Circle grant in spring 2020 to train Res Life staff as sexuality educators. Our partner was the Dean's Office on that, and Dean of Students Office and Sexuality Education Studies Center. We do a lot on sustainability. Those of you who know Dr. Hayes Cummins, who has recently retired, has really, and also Dr. Money, have really infused environmental sustainability and climate change work throughout the curriculum in Western. So we have a lot of partners on and off campus that help us with that. We ran a co-sponsored and promoted a climate change art show with Project Dragonfly, a graduate nature education program at Miami, and we held that at the Oxford Community Arts Center. So it wasn't, we're always trying to get off campus as much as possible as well, just to expose students to a number of different experiences. And then we have kind of this other theme of community engaged undergraduate research, again, getting folks off campus. We partner every year with Miami University's Institute for Entrepreneurship over in the Farmer School of Business on Social Innovation Weekend. That's a weekend-long, basically, case competition where students work on one particular social problem. This spring, it was affordable housing and homelessness, and try to break off a part of that on an interdisciplinary team and come up with a solution. I am proud to say that first-year student Andrew Davis and incoming Western recruit from last fall, with the help of some of the scholarship dollars that the alumni have donated, won with his team. That whole 250 student competition with their idea for an app that would support LGBTQIA students with their coming out process, is that is often a time where they are more vulnerable to housing insecurity. We also are still in Peabody Hall in 022, and we do weekly tea and lots of other activities to engage the Peabody Hall community. As of last year, we have a new living learning community, which means it's a group of about 45 students who live in Peabody Hall that are interested in various things Western or are themselves incoming Western majors. And they interact a whole lot with the center. So it's certainly not the same as a residential college, as many of you experienced, but it's the closest thing that we have at this moment at Miami for Western students. And a lot of them kind of find out about Western through their interaction with Western Center programming. I'm going to attempt here to give you just a few different student perspectives on what we do at the Western Center, and just quick minute and a half clips. I've got 3 of those for you here, and we will be sending out an email after the programming to everybody who registered for this session that gives you 9 current Western students total, and a little bit about what they're doing and why they chose Western. I think a number of you have expressed interest in getting to know our students' work. This is Aaliyah A.G. She was a social impact and justice scholar, still is. That is a scholarship program run through the Western Center for Social Impact and Innovation. She is the only person here that is not a Western major. We just couldn't nab her. She came in, she was one of the students that came in bio and pre-med and is going the whole way. But she does a lot of work at the Western Center in terms of her co-curricular engagement. Specifically, she's interested on anything DEI, which we do a lot of at the center, as well as environmental sustainability and health equity. So she's been very active, and she was awarded a social justice internship her first year last year down in over the Rhine at Crossroads Health Center, which is a health center that serves lower income residents in the neighborhood. So I'm going to let her talk a little bit about her experience.
So for example, being a social impact and justice scholar, I was able to secure an internship the Jan term of my freshman year at Crossroads Health Center. So there I was responsible for doing the social determinants of health screening. So this allowed me to work directly with patients in a meaningful manner to address some of those outside factors that we don't necessarily think about that impact one's health. And with that information, I was then able to provide patients with local resources to help them address those issues and improve their overall health and well-being. It was a very insightful experience, and I'm really grateful that I was able to engage with the Over the Rhine community in that manner.
She's also, as you can see, going on to continue service through the Associated Student Government next year as the sustainability coordinator, largely through many of the experiences that she was able to have in the Western Center. Our second stream of programming and our last stream is thematic programming. So every 2 years, we choose a relevant, timely theme. This past year, it was water access and insecurity from 2019 through 2021. We offer academic coursework on it through the Western Core that is open not only to majors, but also we get a number of students from other interested areas. We taught a course on water access and policy this year, partnered with a Miami alum who was a Clean Water Act attorney for the EPA, came in virtually to do a number of lectures for students in U.S. water policy. And then we also taught and continue to teach a class on the Flint, Michigan water crisis, which doubles as a research methods class. So students do their own original research into sustainability in small groups, and they also learn the story of the Flint, Michigan water crisis and some of the solutions that have come out of it. We have a number of co-curricular programs, just like on the list that I showed you before, but that are specifically about the theme. This year, we, at the end of the 2-year cycle, we hold a conference that explores, brings in national names, local names, and basically is representative of some of the most important thinkers and approaches that we've explored during the 2 years we've sat with the theme. But we also have local folks come in periodically and do talk. So the Spanish and Portuguese department lent us Dr. Luis Pradanos, and he did some work in political ecologies and post-growth futures. Any of you who know anything about international development and water scarcity know that we really need to start thinking about growth, and particularly economic growth, differently if we are going to manage our resources more sustainably. We do a lot of service learning and community engagement. We have worked on ecological restoration projects these last 2 years at Ernst Theater with our resident landscape architect, Daniel Croco. We have partnered with our local Oxford Three Valley Nature Trust on wetlands restoration projects around the Oxford region. So students get a lot of hands-on opportunity to do the work that we're talking about in class. And then we've done a number of service learning projects every fall with Miami University's Institute for Food. They have an amazing sustainable and regenerative farm that our students regularly volunteer on, as well as other organizations like nature and forest preschools in the region. Again, focused on kind of environmental stewardship, wetland restoration, et cetera. The biennial conference once again, and then we have, we'll have, starting next year, thanks to the work of the WCA's fundraising efforts, a national lecture series on this thematic. This is Chloe Thatch. She's an individualized studies major as well as a neuropsych double major. She's from Ohio. She was a first-year student this year and has just accomplished an amazing kind of the breadth and depth of what she's done with the first year. And many of those opportunities were provided by the Western Center. I am continuously impressed by. So I will hand it over to her.
Hi, my name is Chloe Thatch, and I'm a social impact and justice scholar with majors in biology, individualized studies, and neuroscience. And I just completed my first year at Miami. So I'm passionate in social justice within the medical field, including more representation, proper treatments for all, and equitable health practices and policies. I've taken classes from the Western program and the biology, psychology, and chemistry departments, and I've also integrated experience such as research projects and presentations and internships in order to grow my knowledge of how to one day serve communities by providing equitable health practices. So through the Western Center, I've been able to have the opportunity to gain internship experience at a community health center near Cincinnati, where I was able to serve the community by introducing a developing food prescription program. So that experience was very special to me because it helped me focus on my passions in both healthcare and social justice, and it showed me what type of career I could have in the future. As of now, my career plans are to eventually go to graduate school to focus on neuroscience and the advocacy for equitable treatments for addiction. Thank you.
Just that. Chloe actually has an internship this summer as well with a health equity agency. All right, and this is our last one that I'll play, and then I've just got a couple slides left, and we will wrap it up. This is Maddie McGurr, who is an individualized studies major as well. Her focus is on educational equity, and she is a rising senior from Ohio originally. She came to us as a special education major early on and realized that she wanted to do some larger picture advocacy and policy work. So she's been able to build her Western major around that, and she's had a number of great experiences through the Western Center in community connection. Before we go on, I also want to assure you that we have, and Nick may have better numbers on this, but I feel like at least around 35 to 40% of our students do not identify as women, even though I'm showing you mostly women on here. In fact, you'll see when we send that email out this weekend that there are a few guys who submitted their videos in here as well.
Hello, Miami alum. My name is Madison McGurr, and I'm an incoming senior in the Individualized Studies program through Western. Western has allowed me to study what I care about most, which is the impact of race and class dynamics. More specifically, I'm interested in how to incorporate that in educational reform and nonprofit work. I created my Western major by choosing courses in educational studies, family science and social work, and social justice. Some of the most meaningful experiences I've had in college have been due to Western and the help of other departments. I had the privilege to be a part of the Pepper Fellowship, an internship in the social justice department overseen by Mark Canoe. I was able to live in Cincinnati for 3 weeks and shadow Our Daily Bread, a soup kitchen that serves over 300 meals a day to those in need. I was able to work and live alongside a group of peers my age who were placed at different nonprofits near over the Rhine with me. I've also had the opportunity to work with the wonderful Dr. Glenn Eder Lewis in the Black World Studies and Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies departments. Under her guidance, I was able to travel down to Cincinnati every Friday for almost 2 years to study race and class dynamics in a charter school downtown. This was through the Dreamkeepers program. I worked alongside a small group of Miami students to mentor the high school students. We were there to discuss topics of higher education, mental health, and activism with the students. Both of these experiences I cherish greatly.
All right, and then we'll just wrap it up with a couple more slides. We held our biennial conference, Valuing Water. It was back March 19th this year, part of United Nations World Water Day, which is March 22nd every year. We had almost 250 attendees and even more post-conference views from MU students. If you go to the Western Center's website and you look up events and conferences, you'll see the YouTube link to almost all of the talks given that day, free to the public. We had the Miyamiya Center from campus talk about the role of water in their cultural stories. We had a panel of environmental perspectives on water. We had a panel of sociocultural perspectives, which included a geography scholar on campus, as well as a water walker and a public sculptor who had done work with a lower income community in North Oxford to make sure that their mobile homes were secure for winter and their pipes weren't freezing, which is, again, another way in our own community that this issue is an issue. And then we had Judith LeBlanc, who's the director of the Native Organizers Alliance, provide the keynote, which is very powerful if you get a chance to watch it. Our center's next biennial theme will be reparations as restorative justice. We'll kick it off this fall, and we are partnering with our collaborating scholar, Dr. Rodney Coates, who is a Miami professor of critical race and ethnic studies. He has a subspecialty in reparations. And we really came to this theme, I think, for many obvious reasons, but also perhaps some not so obvious. First, Miami University itself is really making a big effort to focus on racial injustice. So there are a number of centers, faculty, and offices across campus this upcoming academic year that are doing work in this issue. And we thought that we could offer our own unique perspective on that by breaking off and having a real conversation about reparations and restorative justice and kind of a where do we go from here talk. And then during the course of our time doing water insecurity, it was impossible almost always to disentangle all of the racial injustice issues with all of the water inaccess and insecurity issues. So in some ways, this is a very natural next step for us. And finally, I wanted to just offer a thank you in terms of we are very grateful to our work with WAMU and the Western College, as well as the individualized studies alumni that we've worked with over the years. This background image is part of our water mini conference this year. We did a service learning project down at Reuter with the Three Valley Nature Trust, and we had almost 30 students and faculty turn out to help out with this wetlands restoration project. So with your help, this is the kind of work that we can keep doing. Thank you.
Wonderful, you both. I love that insight and update on what's going on in both of your worlds and combined. So I know that we've had quite a few questions roll in here in our chat from those who are viewing, so I will attempt to get to as many as I can. And I won't address them specifically to either of you, so you guys are welcome to speak up at either time or answer from either of your perspectives. So the first question that we had to roll in was that they love to hear that our Western program students are studying abroad. Is there a current location that's most common for these students right now, or are they able to travel all over?
Well, let me take that one. And I think we're going to have to be quite swift. There's a lot of really interesting questions here. I'd love to get to all of them. So I apologize if this is too brief, but if any of you would like to contact me by email and any of the alumni, I'm happy to talk about any of these themes with you individually. Study abroad, yeah. So in terms of our scholarships, we don't direct students toward particular locations, but rather students apply for Western scholarships once they're actually within this is the program. Once they become Western majors, individualized studies majors, so they can use that money to study in any of the locations overseas, hosted by Miami faculty and other programs. I would say over the years, many of our students have worked with, so our former colleague Hayes Cummins, so he retired last summer, he would take many of our students to locations like Costa Rica, for example. Going forward without Hayes, we're probably going to be doing that in the future. But anyway, anything's possible. We've funded student trips to Tanzania. We had a student that did a photographic project. So it's often related to their senior project too. We're just not throwing this money around willy-nilly, but rather this supports their scholarship in many cases. And Jackie, maybe you'd like to say something about our student that we probably invested more in her work. You know who I'm thinking about, who went to Hawaii and elsewhere, but wonderful senior project. But
Yeah, just briefly, some more examples. We had a student 2 years ago, public health double major with Western, go to South Africa to deal with issues of DEI and healthcare access. We had a student, Audrey Lips, who just graduated 2 years ago. And she did this amazing kind of 2-year, over the span of 2 years study through a lot of Western scholarship support. She knew she wanted to come in and study organic agriculture in the Pacific because she had taken a work exchange trip to Hawaii to do some organic farming. She ended up doing an incredible ethnographic research project that spanned the Big Island in Hawaii, that spanned a number of smaller islands in French Polynesia, including Tahiti, as well as an internship on women in environmentalism in the Netherlands. She is now in a PhD program after 2 years of working in community health.
Wow, amazing. So I guess that's a good lead into our next question is, of course, our alumni love that the students have the opportunity to focus on these individual studies and what they're really passionate about. But do you guys find any common themes with what your students decide to focus on? Jackie, I guess I'll direct that to you first since you're here on our large screen.
I would say that, and it's hard to know what comes first, like the chicken or the egg, because they develop their course of study often based on their own interests and through the process of our Western 251 course, where they develop what we call our I-plan. So they get to meet with all the Western faculty and, they have this semester to figure out what they want to do. The Western faculty, most of us deal in issues of ethics, environmentalism. I think we also kind of set them up to, even if they're not initially interested in issues of justice and environmentalism and sustainability, it often becomes infused somewhere in there. And I don't think that's a bad thing. Right. But yeah, otherwise we have a wide range of interests. We have a student right now that's a senior next year interested in homesteading. So he spent last J term in a old rickety van across the country doing work exchange at programs, and that was an independent study for him. And he's kind of been able to carry that theme throughout his coursework. Just one example.
Yeah, one thing I'd mention too that's a good point with that our students do have this commitment to I think thinking deeply about the implications of their work, practical implications in many cases, but also ethical implications. One thing that I've done with the capstone is to actually ask each student to write a statement on ethical issues associated with their project work. Most of them used to do this, but this has been formalized now with the way that I've redesigned the workshop, and that's been really, really interesting. Because all of the projects that I mentioned, there are some surprising, well, perhaps not to you, but to me, surprising issues that came up in terms of ethical considerations, whether you're studying the marketing of wine to sort of a relatively sort of wealthy base of consumers, or whether you're looking at issues of equity among what groups that are disenfranchised for various reasons. Boy, that's utterly meaningless, isn't it? But I think you get the point. We're interested in ethics in very, very broad terms.
Of course. So I guess the next layer to that and what we've dealt with in the last year has been COVID-19. And my next question that came through is, with the program being so individualized, do you think that the impact of COVID was greater for these students, or do you think that they were able to adapt to these changes strongly, just by way of their own individual nature?
So, I mean, I'll take that, because, again, actually teaching the capstone this year, I was really, really concerned about this in the fall semester, the sort of the limited interactions with students. I was really worried about how they'd complete their work, but it was actually quite inspiring. The projects that came out of this work, out of their studies, were really exceptional. We did presentations online. Of the dozen students, they were really spectacular. They were some of the best projects that I've seen in the 10 years that I've been doing this. So in a way, I think in a practical sense, they were able to respond to this sort of better than I was. Having said that, students dealt with some pretty significant personal and emotional issues during this period. And this was a heavy lift for advisors to work with our students. And so, yeah, they had a tough time, but I was really, you don't use that word in a vacuous sense. No, I was really inspired by them with their project work. They were really, they were really fantastic. Yeah. Good,
absolutely. So this question is a little bit different than the train that we've been going on, but the next one is the Institute of Food program on campus associated with the Western program's sustainability focus? So how that connects? Yes. Thanks, Jackie.
Yeah, no, I am on the executive planning committee of the Institute for Food. And we offer 1 to 2 courses per year in Western that count for the food co-studies major, food systems co-studies major. It is not a part of Western, but we work very closely with the Institute for Environmental Sustainability. They run the Institute for Food, who then runs a number of programs, including co-majors, the farm experience that I talked about earlier, etc. So we work very closely with all of them.
Great. Nick, I'm going to ask the next question to you. So good to see with the work that we've been doing with DE&I focus. And how are we going to go about recruiting and retaining a more diverse group of students moving forward, as specifically African-American students and things of that nature, to our Western group?
I mean, it's a brilliant question. I mean, it's something that the whole university is a challenge for the whole university, but it's something that we're, I think, particularly committed to in Western. I think we've actually had a pretty good record relative to perhaps other programs at Miami, but we'd certainly like to see an increasingly diverse student body within the Western program. I think actually that this is maybe where the interaction between the academic program and the Western Center activities, social impact and innovation, really may come into play. So Jackie's probably answered this question addressed this question after it was posed, because I can see these coming up online. But actually, when she's talking about the theme, the theme that we're planning for the Western Center next year, I would hope this would be attractive to all students at Miami, but certainly our work with faculty in other programs, I think this really shows our commitment to these issues. Do you want to say something about that, Jackie? You mentioned our colleague Rodney Coates, for example, that we'll be working with. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so our numbers have been up in terms of racial and ethnic diversity in the last 3 years. I don't have the numbers with me, but if you would like that, please email me after this. I should have thought of that. But we've made great efforts through our outreach to high schools. We now do a good chunk of our own admissions marketing in partnership with the admissions office. And we've chosen to really hit hard, especially some of the local school districts that have higher enrollment rates of students of color and lower income students in general. So we are definitely aware of it, and we're making changes. And we've had a number of very notable students of color in the Western program in the last few years, including Janie Kamara, who was the first Black and queer student body president with ASG. She's also a Western major and critical race and ethnic studies major, double major. We work a lot with that program. She comes to mind, as well as a number of other students over the years. So we definitely need to continue work there. Right. Oh, no. And last thing also, we're working on President Crawford's Boldly Creative DEI initiative to put in place university infrastructure across the university. Western Center and program is part of that, to create a stronger pipeline as a university, to bring students incoming to Miami, and to shift, I think, some of the challenges that Miami has faced culturally, to make this a place where all students are included and getting the best education that they can.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in there and just say what a remarkable student Janie was. I worked with her in the senior project course. I actually ended up meeting with her socially distanced in person quite frequently. She changed my views on a lot of things. She's a remarkable student in the sense that really, really willing to talk with people, even the old white males, older? No, how dare you? Middle-aged white men like myself, about some of our biases. I think those were some of the most stimulating conversations that I've ever had with a student. I just love her. Absolutely fascinating. Can I jump onto that last question that popped up, Sarah?
Of course,
I'm reading these on my screen.
Of course, yes.
Fail at many other things, Zoom, computer-wise, but so this was something. Actually, I did have a few more slides, but I decided to move on and to the Western Center. But in terms of our future interactions, one of those must involve the Honors College. The Honors College is being reimagined, and my colleague Zeb Baker's the director of the new Honors Experience. So yeah, we're sharing some real estate going forward, and so that's a work in progress. I am very hopeful, and Zeb is also hopeful, that one thing that we can do is, through the kind of project experience that we offer, that we actually can recruit honors students to the individualized studies major, and that will be so they'd actually conduct a senior research project that used to be a part of every honors student's experience at Miami. It hasn't been for some time. We've got this mechanism in place. I think it's a kick-ass series of workshops that we do over two semesters. So I'd love to see honors students in there. Staffing's going to be a challenge. We're such a small crew in Western, but I think Zeb's excited about that opportunity. But I think more than that, the fact that we'll have honors students on that side of campus, and we'll be co-sponsoring events going forward with honors. I think there's a richness of opportunity here. I'm hoping this is going to be a game changer for both programs. So we'll see how this develops. Obviously, the first cohort of the new honors students will be arriving in August. So we'll be watching this with great interest.
Of course. Yes. Very excited to see. And just a little bit of background, if you're on our webinar and you aren't aware, is the Western program is transitioning into the Western College. And that's what Nick is referring to. They are going to start moving into Peabody, if not a little go ahead.
Honors.
Or Honors College.
Honors.
Here it is. I have
How
Western
dare you?
I apologize. Thank you.
We're the
Yes.
Western program.
Honors College. Honors College is moving into share space with our Western program in Peabody. But yes, of course, very excited for that relationship. And I'm excited personally because these are two groups that I get to work with and love. So thank you for answering that, Nick. That's a big, outstanding question. I know a lot of members on our board wanted to know. And it looks like the last question that I have here, I know we made quick mention of what our theme currently is, but are you guys able to share any more about what the next theme will be, or is that something that was soon to come?
So Jackie did this with her at the end of her presentation, actually, although why don't you reiterate it, Jackie, because it is, the issue of reparations broadly is so fascinating.
Yes.
Yeah, we're going to be working on issues of racial injustice, specifically the idea of reparations as restorative justice. Very briefly, year one, we're going to kind of embark in collaboration with a few high schools and different departments around campus on kind of a truth-seeking mission to think about a place-based approach. So what happened in our own community and region over the last 400 years or so, and now concerning racial injustice. We're working with the Miamia Center on this and a number of other community partners. And then year two of that theme, we'll be thinking about, okay, so we've got this bigger picture now that we often don't talk about. What would healing and reparations look like going forward? So we plan to hold some town halls around that to bring in some international perspectives, scholars that have worked, for example, in South Africa's Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and thinking about how do we do things in the US that we haven't done before on this issue. So we're really excited to kind of move from water access into something kind of more narrow and broad at the same time that is in many ways related.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. Thank you for the extra detail. I appreciate it. We are kind of at the end of our session here, and I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up. Both Nick and Jackie, thank you so much for your time today and your insight and all that is going on in the Western program. I know that this is a big point that we wanted to hit and share with everyone. So thank you again for being able to discuss the current state of our Western program and, of course, how you have continued to focus with your students on the interdisciplinary thinking to form a foundation for individualized and integrated study. I promise the PhDs in this room would do much better reading than I would today. Thank you. So for Alumni Weekend, the next session that we have coming up is a spotlight on Greek life. If you are planning on attending that, please remember that there is a unique URL for each session. So refer back to your viewing link email, which was sent to you both 24 hours prior and 2 hours prior before for each presentation. So on behalf of Miami University Alumni Association and our Western program, thank you for joining us this Saturday afternoon, and love and honor.
Thank you.